Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and today we're going to talk about 10 different Doctor Who stories I really like, all featuring 10 different Doctors. Note that this isn't the best of Doctor Who, it's not a ranked list of any kind, or an expression of the absolute best out there for each of these Doctors. It's just a sampling of 10 great parts of Doctor Who I've enjoyed over the years that I think people might also like and are worth checking out. I tried to pick out a little bit of everything, including content that works great for new fans and even some stuff that more hardcore viewers might have never even heard of. To that end, this will be a pretty light on spoiler type of video, while also celebrating and talking about some of the franchise's achievements along the way. Number 1. The Daleks. So the only order I'm taking here is a chronological one, as the earliest story of the 10 I've selected for today will first be talking about the Daleks. This 7-episode story was the second ever to air for the original Doctor Who series, the very first to feature the Daleks themselves, and easily a standout to me among the best of the best when it comes to television stories with the first Doctor. These episodes contributed a lot to the perception of the show in the early days. It put it on the map in terms of ratings, and it spawned the Daleks as the foremost foe of Doctor Who. What I admire most about production of this thing is that everything kind of works here. Writer Terry Nation grew up with vivid memories of World War II, and so he had something very specific in mind when creating the Daleks. The show, from its birth, was never really afraid to express its strong, anti-authoritarian, nakedly political spirit. It is a great example of that tradition first being outlined here, and it's right at the very start of the series. Don't let anyone ever tell you that politics doesn't belong in Doctor Who, or that the politics even have to be all that subtle. Neither is true of the Daleks, and the episodes are that much stronger for it. Something about these very simple, kind of silly-looking aliens just works when you see them in motion. They don't seem right. They are asymmetrical, cold, and dangerous in their look. Doctor Who co-creator Verity Lambert has talked about how people instantly were fascinated by their design on set when they were filming the Daleks. Everyone was blown away by the design right out of the gate, and it's easy to see why. Something about them just works well, and it's never really had to stray far from that original look all that much. It just works and is all pretty much laid out here. This story established Skaro as their home world, the Daleks and their history with the Thals, and even the aliens' mannerisms and behaviors. In so many ways, these episodes are everything that really defines the Daleks even to this day, and what makes them an intimidating threat, decades after they originally aired. The Doctor, his granddaughter Susan, and his companions Ian and Barbara are all also used pretty well here to showcase these themes of fascism and how to combat it, as they worked with the Thals to try and find a way to stop the seemingly unstoppable Daleks. These villains really hold all the cards in terms of power in this story, and the show does a good job at showing how monstrous these aliens really are, even in the early days of this franchise. It's an easy story to follow, but one that I feel largely moves pretty consistently and does a lot in that time that would be used to establish so much of the franchise's core identity. I really think that if you're a Doctor Who fan, sooner or later you just have to check these episodes out, as odds are, even though they are 60 years old and counting, you won't be disappointed.
The provision of food, all these things will give them a false sense of security.
Number 2.
Hold on, you two! Now wait a bit.
The Enemy of the World. The Second Doctor's era has become a strange mishmash of surviving content, including sadly long stretches of missing and lost episodes where footage from entire seasons is extremely limited or entirely gone. It's a weird facet of Doctor Who that leads to facts like you simply can't easily watch the First Doctor's very last story, and most of the Second Doctor's early stories as they originally existed. But that's just what happened. Episodes were junked, as film used to be very expensive and even quite dangerous to store. So there's a lot of Doctor Who in the 1960s that is simply gone, and you have to rely on recreations or animations of some kind instead. Luckily, many of the Second Doctor serials that have survived are also some of the very best of what this time in Doctor Who history has to offer. Enemy of the World is a prime example of that, although interestingly, these episodes only became available in 2013, meaning much of it was missing for a breathtaking 46 years. That's astounding to think about, how Doctor Who fans have lived and died in that period, never having seen these episodes proper, and it's a real shame because I really like this story. Enemy of the World features the Second Doctor, his companions Victoria and Jamie, all traveling to the then distant future of 2018. The TARDIS crew find a world controlled by the deadly Salamander, a vicious dictator with a great deal of knowledge and science who just so happens to bear an uncanny resemblance to the Doctor. From here it becomes a story of political intrigue, a 1960s take on the near future, and a relatively thoughtful look at the dangers of fascism. It's right in line with the Daleks in addressing all these issues as part of that long-running anti-authoritarianism that runs throughout all of Doctor Who at its best. So yeah, I'm a happy camper when watching this one. Fighting fascists isn't the only thing the Doctor Who's about, but it's a pretty great side to the series. There's a lot of quality moments that really make Enemy of the World stand out beyond that, though. At the start of the story, we have the Doctor just hanging out on the beach with Jamie and Victoria, which works really well as a fun moment for these characters, but also a very memorable chase as we dive into the plot proper and things start to get very serious. Patrick Troughton also gets to show off his talents here, playing not only his Doctor role to the usual perfect balance of silliness hiding some great deal of wisdom, but also Salamander, a cruel villain but one I found endlessly fun to watch. Early Doctor Who stories do this sort of thing pretty often, with the First Doctor era featuring quite a few adventures that have William Hartnell playing both the Doctor and some more villainous role. Troughton doing it here is done really well, and it leads to one of my favorite Second Doctor stories overall.
I hope there's plenty of air in here.
Number 3.
We're not exactly spies here at UNIT.
Then what do you do, exactly?
Spearhead from Space. It's a monumentally important story for Doctor Who history. Not only is it the Third Doctor's first set of episodes, not only is it the first Doctor Who story produced in color, not only is it the first story featuring new companion Liz Shaw, but also it's the very first story to take place with the Doctor stranded on Earth and working with UNIT. Combined, these are all a lot of big changes for the show, and a huge departure from the style and substance of the First and Second Doctor eras. But I found it refreshing more than anything else. It's not a knock on the first two Doctors and the black and white era, really, but rather about how the new arrival of this change in status quo comes like a storm, and really brings a lot of new energy to the series. These episodes have an excellent pace and sense of action to them. I found the characters engaging and the show suddenly a lot more exciting than it had felt before. Sure, it feels like Doctor Who is taking a huge step towards action away from the more ponderous tone of the black and white era, but it doesn't really come with a loss of substance either. The Doctor is in a very interesting position here as a character. He's completely out of his element and without his usual resources, which showcases the new sense the show is going for nicely. We're digging in here with UNIT for a little bit, and it establishes that norm while making it also seem like a fun direction for the show. Jon Pertwee is so great to that effect. He's got a real sense of stage presence that makes him so good with his dialogue and the delivery of it, even if it doesn't always translate in the action. Sure, some of the special effects are a little dated and some of the action just looks plain goofy, but I found Spearhead from Space so fun and such a treat that it's very easy to overlook some of the more silly elements of the show. I've heard people suggest that those who are new to classic Doctor Who start here, and I think that's a wise choice, even if that's not how I personally did it myself. There's a lot of fun to be had with the Third Doctor era, and it might be a little easier getting through compared to the black and white era for newer fans, which I've always found is better taken piecemeal anyways, picking up a few stories here and there instead of trying to go through all 6 seasons in order. It's also worth mentioning that Nicholas Courtney returns to the role of the Brigadier here. something he'd do for most of the Third Doctor era as a new, reliable part of the show that I really think adds a lot to the series. He's able to represent a sense of continuity as this character goes on to meet more incarnations of the Doctor than anyone throughout the show's history. He also gives this new sense of antagonism, which I don't find unwelcome. The Brigadier can be a source of friendship and helpfulness with the Doctor, but especially at this time, there's also a lot of conflict, and the man would frequently come to represent the foibles of authoritarianism and nationalism, a core value of the overall franchise. It's like I said earlier, there's quite a bit of substance under the surface of Spearhead from Space and the Third Doctor era, in spite of it being a time in the series I think is overlooked by a lot of viewers. These are some of my favorite episodes of the show though, and absolutely a must-watch for Doctor Who fans everywhere. Number 4. If you mean, do the gods resemble men in their countenance, then the answer is yes. If you mean, do the gods resemble it with personality, vanity, and weakness, then the answer too is yes. The gods are to us as we are to an insect. They are no more aware of us than we are of the fly. Do not look to your gods, Plato, for they have no interest in you. The Spindle of Necessity. Alright, so I started us off easy. 3 stories from the original television series featuring the first 3 Doctors. No biggie, nothing too far off the beaten path or too far into the fandom. Yet it's time to skip forward a little bit and jump away from the television show. Make no mistake, this is a large and enormous franchise with a lot of depth beyond a television show. And I do want to cover at least a few different types of media for this video. After all, while most Doctors have at least some moments of greatness in their original television appearances, if not a lot, some don't have any. On more than one occasion now, the various showrunners of Doctor Who over the years have kind of dropped the ball, and characters like the 6th Doctor really suffered as a result. Colin Baker simply does not have a lot of good episodes from the original television show, at least in my opinion. But this incarnation has since taken on a life long beyond that. Baker himself has appeared in many cool Big Finish audio adventures that have shown how great he can be as a performer and how truly awesome this Doctor is. The character of the 6th Doctor has also gotten to shine in many comics and other stories over the years, giving what was a relatively short-lived incarnation on the television show a lasting legacy, his own history with a series of companions, and a strong sense of character unique from all other versions of the Doctor. So even though the 6th Doctor has some of the worst television episodes, this is now easily one of my favorite Doctors, and I definitely want to talk about him a little bit, even if that means talking about a story that's just about as obscure as one can get with the character. Spindle of Necessity is a short story from this anthology book called The Equality of Leadership. It is out of print now, so you basically have to get this digital copy. I will try to provide a link in the description. The Equality of Leadership is a bunch of short stories all about the Doctor traveling through time and meeting important leaders throughout history, and I mostly enjoyed the entire book. Some short stories were of course better than others, but a few really stood out to me, and Spindle of Necessity is peak among them. We start this off with the 6th Doctor living in isolation on Earth during the time of antiquity in ancient Greece. He is retired from adventuring to ruminate about this traumatic trial he just went through in the show. That trial is an important part in the 6th Doctor's history on the show, and was depicted over the course of an entire season. Like the 11th Doctor would go on to do in the show, the 6th Doctor is kind of just done, or at least taking a serious, long-term break with no apparent intention to ever return to his old life of traveling. In a story rather brilliantly written in the same Socratic dialogue that Plato's recorded writings use, we see the Doctor encounter Plato himself. They get into a bit of debate over the nature of the universe, with Plato claiming there's a magical passageway to the afterlife at Earth's South Pole, and the Doctor obviously knowing better. The two decide to go on a journey together to essentially try and prove each other wrong. Right from the start, they have a very interesting dynamic and strike up this very cool friendship I enjoyed reading about. The writer of this story is Alan Gibson, a Star Trek author who does a very good job at creating a strong sense of identity for Plato, his buddy Eudemus, and the Doctor in a relatively short time. And then this amazing twist happens that just really takes the story in an unexpected direction. I just love how nicely it ties into the Doctor and this period of solitude he went through at the time, which really makes a lot of sense given the nature of the trial of the Time Lord being this big season-long arc that actually had an effect on the character. There's a few stories that follow up on the trial in this way, showing the effects on the Doctor's character and the trial being this big traumatic experience. I really like these stories because it's all very organic. This careful writing that was tragically absent from the original show that adds a bit of depth for fans of this character. The trial should have been a big deal, and the fact that it is and had this big effect on the character that the Sixth Doctor needed time to recover from it makes a lot of sense. So Spindle of Necessity really delves into the idea in a cool and unique way for the franchise, talking about why and how he ultimately recovered from this trauma in a cool way. I cannot give away any real spoilers for this short story. I really enjoyed the surprise and think you should check it out for yourself. The digital copy works just fine, and you get a decent collection of fun short stories beyond just this one. So I think most Doctor Who fans would find something to enjoy here. Number 5.
November? No. It's 1967, the 50th anniversary of the October Revolution. November was when it all ended in the bloody downfall of the Tsars. It was meant to be an improvement. But look how it ended up.
Thin Ice. Now, part of this video is to try and find recommendations for all sorts of fans. New fans would enjoy something like Spearhead from Space, but seasoned veterans are probably more than familiar with those episodes already. Likewise, a lot of Doctor Who fans should be very familiar with the Doctor Who episodes featuring the 7th Doctor and Ace. If you haven't checked those out before, well, that's my recommendation right there. You should absolutely watch the entire 3 seasons featuring the 7th Doctor. They are a real bright gem at the end of a long road that had gone awry during the 1980s. But they had finally found its place right before the show was sadly cancelled. There's a lot of classics to enjoy there, like Remembrance of the Daleks, Battlefield, and The Curse of Fenric, all well remembered in the fandom for good reasons. If you haven't seen those episodes before, like I said, that's where you should start. But they aren't the focus of this segment. This is for those who already know Ace and the Doctor and have seen those episodes 100 times, because that's where Big Finish really shines. For those that don't know, I've referenced the company a couple times now, but in addition to decades of Doctor Who television stories, there's a little company out there called Big Finish that has been creating hundreds and hundreds of audio adventures featuring Doctors new and old, many of which are performed by the original cast. This has been an amazing and unique opportunity for the franchise, an absolute gift for Doctor Who fans thanks to what those audios have done for the series. They've brought new life and much needed depth to characters like the 6th Doctor, while following up on content for characters like the 7th Doctor that were tragically cut short and never produced thanks to the show's cancellation. Thin Ice is a Big Finish lost story. Audio adventures designed to recreate cancelled, altered, and abandoned Doctor Who stories that were at one time or another considered for the original series. In the case of this story, Thin Ice was a planned episode for season 27, a season that never happened thanks to BBC cancelling the show. I really liked this audio and think any Doctor Who fan would get something out of it, although it isn't enjoyed by everyone and I'm a little alone in that feeling. I really feel like it's a cool thing for anyone who knows Ace and the 7th Doctor really well. It's all about this helmet turning a woman into an ice warrior named Caesar. He's this legendary figure in Ice Warrior history, an important military leader that they value tremendously. And I really like how this transformation is performed by Beth Chalmers. She does a very fun transition into Ice Warrior voice I found very memorable.
Ace? Hello. How do you feel?
Marcus,
Popped out.
This is unendurable.
I really think this audio has a lot of interesting ideas to it, and just like in the modern television show, Ice Warriors blend really nicely with a Cold War setting, with Thin Ice exploring that in a fun way. This audio is also cool because it gets into the original plan for Ace's character, and all of the Doctor's scheming around her that we had seen in the show. I like the moral ambiguity around her character here, as the Time Lords are quietly testing her behind the scenes, and the Doctor sort of has to play the whole thing neutral. It brings up interesting questions as to what exactly a Time Lord is, as it seems as though Ace is a contender to become one here, implying they are distinct from Gallifreyans to a degree and can include outsiders. It's cool content even if it contrasts a bit with what we know of the Time Lords and established elsewhere in the franchise, but I can't say I hate it for that reason. These are interesting ideas that feel worth exploring, and I really don't care beyond that. It's definitely a noteworthy story for Ace fans and a fun audio worth checking out for those who like Doctor Who in general.
Sorry about the Doctor. He gets protective.
His stance is forthright. One thing is clear. He is an old warrior, too.
Number 6.
TARDIS manual. Not here, are you? Oh. Agatha Christie, the murder of Roger Ackroyd. First printing. War and Peace. The I Spy Book of British Birds. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Emergency stop, but that's not happened in centuries.
Storm Warning. Next up is an easy recommendation, as it is often considered a great jumping on point for a Doctor that simply barely exists in live-action format much at all. As the 8th Doctor, Paul McGann appeared in a polarizing movie, a tie-in short made decades later for the 50th anniversary, and a cameo more recently in The Power of the Doctor. It's not much, and a staggeringly small a series of appearances compared to just about any iteration of the Doctor outside of John Hurt. This is where Big Finish becomes so essential to the Doctor Who franchise, and thanks to them, there's a full suite of 8th Doctor performances by Paul McGann, including a complete roster of companions, easily compared to any other incarnation of the Doctor. And many of these audio stories have gone on to become some of the best content you'll ever find in Doctor Who. Storm Warning isn't the best, but it's a great gateway into it, allowing you to really start off with this content. And I also like it a lot. We start off with the Doctor rummaging through the TARDIS library, instantly evoking the 8th Doctor's gorgeous TARDIS that we only ever really got a small glimpse of in the film. From there, the Doctor winds up meeting his first audio companion, Charlie, who grew up in Edwardian times in the year 1930. Instantly, that really helps to set her apart from other companions. Even in the world of Big Finish, companions from the past are relatively rare. It's a fun take on the companion role, made all the better by India Fisher's legendary and very distinct performance as Charlie. She's one of my favorite performers to regularly appear in Big Finish that didn't come from the show, and has a really solid introduction here.
Memoirs of an Edwardian Adventuress by Charlotte E. Pollard, Chapter 1. I watched as the full moon shimmered into view, casting silver rays about the cabin when... Lord! Strike a light! Is that the time? Be right with you, Chief Steward Weeks, sir!
We get a lot around her character and her frustration over basically growing up in a gilded cage early on in this writing. So it is immediately apparent why she would strike an accord with the Doctor and want to go traveling with him. The focus of this story is all around the launch of this new airship, which runs afoul with this whole alien plot that basically unfolds into this diplomatic incident. I'll be honest, it's not the most compelling or important content, because that's not what the focus of this audio is. So it can be a little clunky around the alien stuff, because what's important is the dynamic of the Doctor and Charlie traveling together, and I would argue Storm Warning does that almost perfectly. They also end the audio on a bit of a strong note with these pterodactyl-like creatures called vortisaurs that's very bizarre and very memorable. I found it exciting, even if I'm sure many will find it a little silly, but that's Doctor Who. Silly is kind of the name of the game. Storm Warning not only embraces the fun side of the franchise, but also leaves you eager to see more of these two characters in future adventures together, which is so important for an early story like this. By my best estimate, this might be the third time that Paul McGann ever played the Doctor. He nails it here, but it's staggering to think about just how much was riding on this audio working out. In that regard, Storm Warning reminds me a lot of the episodes Rose and the Christmas Invasion. All three of these stories introduce us to a new run of adventures with new characters, and while none of them have perfect plots, they are excellent at getting you oriented with said characters and establishing the tone of the series that would be followed up on quite nicely in the future. I would heartily recommend Storm Warning to any Doctor Who fan, and best of all, it is free. You can get it on Spotify, and I listen to it on Hoopla through my local library. Depending on where you live, you probably can too.
Geronimo, Lenin's pajamas, Tiddlywinks with the Tsarina, and now you can see the future.
Charlie, I'm telling you the truth. At least I think I am.
Number 7.
What?
Unfamiliar. Scent of old tanned hides.
It's leather.
Citrus. Engine oil and books. Smells like tomorrow.
Doyle, you're scaring me. How can it smell like tomorrow?
Stranger. Stay back.
Ah, that's new. Spoken to plenty of dogs in my time, only a few talk back.
Red Darkness. Times have been exciting for Doctor Who fans. After years away from the role, Christopher Eccleston had, for a time at least, returned to the role of the Doctor for a wide variety of Big Finish audio adventures. For now he's done and taking a break from it, but I think one day he will return. And in the meantime, we have dozens of new stories, all completely voiced by Eccleston. I never thought it would have happened, and it's so cool being able to return to the character decades after his original appearance on the show, which sadly only lasted for one season. While I don't think everyone is going to like all of these audios equally, and I certainly have some preferences myself, there's definitely a little something for everyone here. Personally, there's a bunch that I love, and I'd go so far as to say there's a number that are not only great, but some of the best Ninth Doctor stories out there, period. Better than some of his best episodes on television and in other media. I've been having a blast experiencing new Ninth Doctor stories, and Red Darkness is one that really stood out as an outstanding Doctor Who adventure I think many fans would enjoy. So the Doctor comes across this entire colony of humans that have disappeared. He winds up finding only a handful of survivors, including a young man named Callan, his seeing eye dog Doyle, and his mother. All three of these characters have a lot to add to the story and give a strong sense of stakes as you become invested in their well-being in a tremendously dangerous situation that unfolds around them. It's been months since I've listened to this one, and I can still tell you a lot about each of these characters, as I find them very memorable that really stand out from the usual clutter of guest actors that you get in just about every single Doctor Who story. As a mood and energy, Red Darkness reminds me a lot of the movie Pitch Black. If you like that movie, and you like Doctor Who, you're in for a hell of a time with Red Darkness. I really dug the spooky vibes and tense energy this audio gives off, and found it a nice and tightly written script by Roy Gill. It really captured my imagination in all the right ways, using its antagonists in a way that made them feel like a very present and real danger, while intimately tied to the character Callan, who is blind and immune to some of the danger because of it. This script does a very good job writing about this character, giving Callan a very active and important role in the story that makes him fun and interesting to follow, without really defining him entirely by his blindness either. Doyle, who I will remind you is a dog, also has a lot of personality written in him. And he winds up being such a great character.
Doctor, I can get you back to Connor's farm. Doyle can do the rest.
I can track footsteps.
He's right, it's settled. Good man. And good dog. Kinda goes without saying.
He alone kind of elevates this story to exceptional levels. Yes, the dog elevates this story, I'm not kidding. I think for all these reasons and more, Red Darkness might be the thing I was most excited to talk about in today's video. It's not the absolute best Doctor Who story or anything like that, but it's a solid, spooky story, absolutely worth checking out. I just found it so cool. I especially appreciate it because we have so few television stories featuring the Ninth Doctor, let alone ones that are really tightly written like this. So having this not only be a Ninth Doctor story starring Eccleston that is worth talking about and listening to, but also having several other great audios of similar quality at this point, is something I will always be grateful about when it comes to Big Finish. Sadly, Red Darkness is part of a box set that is not available for a cheap price, but stuff like Red Darkness and the 2 audios included in the box set with it are definitely worth listening to, and make sure you listen to them in order. Red Darkness kind of builds up on some stuff established earlier here that's worth checking out.
Doctor. Oh, nothing wrong with a good rage against dying. Show them, Doyle. We shall not go quietly into red darkness. Now that is good poetry.
Number 8.
I'll have to do it. Martha, you trust me, don't you?
Of course I do.
This watch, Martha. This watch is...
Human Nature and the Family of Blood. Next up is our first look at the revived television series, which for a lot of fans is where their interest in Doctor Who kind of starts and ends. Part of the goal of this video is to try and jostle those fans a bit and get them to try out new content, but there's still plenty of reasons and things to talk about in the modern iteration of the show. I also want to invite others that might not know much about the new series for whatever reason to be able to find good content from this era, be they newcomers or simply those that haven't been able to get into this side of the show until now. The revived series has already become an enormous, decades-long behemoth of its own, so I'm sure there's fans out there that might have skipped over the days of the 10th Doctor in favor of newer content. Fans familiar with these episodes are also welcome here, as we are also going to celebrate, denote, and review this content just as much as I am recommending it. Human Nature and Family of Blood, a great 2-parter, absolutely deserve a recommendation along with a whole buttload of analysis. This story finds us at a time just before World War I. The Doctor has mysteriously adopted the identity of John Smith and seems to have lost all memory of his past as a time traveler. Only his companion Martha seems to know what is really going on, as the two are fleeing from this family of aliens seeking to steal the Doctor's life force, so the Doctor has wiped out his own memories to go into hiding. We're introduced to this fob watch, an important part of the modern show, as this device preserves a Time Lord's memories while they become, in this case, an ordinary human. It works incredibly well as a premise, the Doctor and Martha stranded while these aliens are menacing around looking for them. It leads to a very frustrating and difficult experience for Martha, who in her time is a medical doctor, while in this time is barely respected as a maid. It's one of the first times I've ever seen the show in any format really address the inherent racism and even classism that permeates most of human history. And it's done in a rather powerful way, leaving a lot unsaid and kind of saying a lot by doing so. Writer Paul Cornell really scripted these episodes artfully. He's kind of able to talk about World War I in a time before the event has even really happened, not only doing a lot of strong character work for these boys who are going to go on and fight this war, but also John Smith. He's a really interesting character with a lot of narrative going on around him. This is a man who essentially formed his own memories and attachments as a human, even though they're artificial, and so he really resists turning away from that, even as Martha increasingly desperately prods at him to become a Time Lord again. And it's easy to understand why. The Doctor's life, while fantastical, at this time in the show is in a very painful place. It makes sense that a person wouldn't exactly want to go back to being the burden of what the Doctor is in the modern age. Because in the revived series, the Doctor is changed, becoming the sole survivor of a terrible galactic war that he himself had to commit genocide just to get out of. So when he flashes to that life, those feelings, and those memories, well, that would terrify anyone. There's a really good story going on here that gets into a lot of key elements of modern Doctor Who, with a lot of twists and turns along the way. I won't give away that ending, but if you've seen these episodes, you know just how well that ending is done and how striking it is. It says a lot about the Doctor and what's going on in his head at this time that I really appreciated and definitely think makes this one of the 2 better episodes in all of modern Who.
You're called the Doctor. The man in your journal, he's real. He's you.
Number 9.
The young man flipped open a small leather envelope. See? You just carry your medical degree around with you everywhere you go, do you? Oh, is that what it is?
The World Tree. The last Big Finish project we'll be covering today is a unique one in that it is the result of an annual writing contest the company holds. So this is a story written by a fan named Nick Slawitz, whose entry was selected by Big Finish and ultimately produced into a fully narrated short story audio. I found the World Tree impressive and very moving, and best of all, it's totally free. You can download and listen to it on Big Finish's website, and I recommend you do so now. A 76-year-old named Nora Wicker struggles with her memories and encroaching dementia. She recites information like the date, when she was born, and when her husband was born and died to test herself and keep her mind active. One day, she finds the doctor in her garden. There's no conflict and action that results from this, just a woman visited by the doctor and them making some critical decisions surrounding her future and current situation. It's so loving and so sincere, with a lot of very thoughtful dialogue about aging, dementia, and the importance of memories. Writer Nick Slawitz did a remarkable job with excellent narration by Lisa Bowerman. I recommend 11th Doctor fans everywhere check out this audio for themselves. Given the story isn't terribly long, and again, completely free, you have literally nothing to lose.
Do I know you, Doctor? She asked. I first met you today, 46 years ago.
Number 10. Listen. Our last story for this video is a very cool horror episode from the 12th Doctor era of the television show. Doctor Who is a lot of things. It can be adventure, it can be a bit of action, it can be romantic in both the new and old definition of the word, and sometimes it can be a terrifying horror. In fact, some of my favorite Doctor Who stories lean into the spooky and embrace it. With a long legacy of excellent horror stories in the Doctor Who franchise, such as episodes like Blink and Midnight, or audio adventures like The Chimes of Midnight and iterations of I, Listen joins that legacy as a top-tier thriller with a lot of memorable moments and interesting ideas. What I love most about Listen is its ambiguity. Something might be menacing the Doctor and his companion Clara, but we never quite get a glimpse of what that being is, what it's about, or even if it really exists. But something is going on here. Something bad is in this room, under this blanket, in this incredibly tense scene. Something that can't be easily explained by anything else in the episode. You, as a viewer, are left with some clues, but are otherwise left to make your own decisions about what this story is, what it's exactly about, and what is going on here. And I couldn't be happier about that. It's an especially effective plot choice here, where fear of the unknown is such an important theme of the episode to begin with. I found Listen incredibly well written and also very well acted. Every Doctor shows fear in some way at some point, but Capaldi really stands out here, making unique choices that give his performance a certain unforgettable edge to it. This acting makes the episode stand out as a very cool entry in the history of Doctor Who horror stories, and an important part of what makes Listen work so well. Jenna Coleman as Clara is also really great here. It's a strong moment in television overall, with a lot of creepy ideas that are pretty well explored in my opinion, and represents one of the better television stories to feature the 12th Doctor too.
I have to know.
Doctor. Is there even an atmosphere out there?
There's an air shell around the ship. Why are you still here?
Because I am not going to leave you in danger!
Oh!
You're an idiot.
I know.
So that's it, 10 stories in Doctor Who history that have really stood out to me. Again, they're not my favorite or the all-time best, but they're 10 things that I think Doctor Who fans could really enjoy. While making this list, I also thought of making a 10 really bad Doctor Who stories list, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that, because, oh boy, there's a lot of really good stories in Doctor Who history, but also a lot of really bad ones we're talking about too. So if you'd like to see that, let me know. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Comic Island.